Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plot Lines. I'm your host, Connor, and today we're going to be talking about woke-proofing your life. And we have the author of Woke-proofing Your Life, Teresa Mull is the author of Woke-Proof Your Life, a handbook on escaping modern political madness and shielding yourself and your family by living a more self-sufficient, fulfilling life. Teresa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You are also the assistant editor at the Spectator World and a political advisor for education at the Heartland Institute. So it's really a pleasure talking with you. I think the best way to start really is, what is the definition of woke? I think that I think people can get into the weeds with that and, be confused by different definitions. So what's the definition you're going off of?
Yeah, a lot of people get caught up in what woke means, and I think that's on purpose. The woke puppet masters like to try to confuse us and use vague terminology, and woke is certainly one of them. Kind of takes the cake, but I define it as a socio-political ideology characterized by the manipulation of noble goals by radical left-wing zealots for the control and destruction of society. It is a form of evil. It's radical progressivism, and it's basically political correctness on steroids.
Gotcha. So, and is woke proofing your life an inherently sacrificial choice to make?
Yes and no. I think it's easier than most people think. I go through the book about ways in which you can do it relatively pain-free, so to speak. And I also highlight the many advantages of woke-proofing your life. It's kind of like any sacrifice that might seem difficult to do initially, say giving up sugar or something like that. You know, it can seem uncomfortable for a day or a week or so, but then you realize all of these amazing benefits. You feel better, you're less sluggish, whatever it is that you're sacrificing for the good of your, in that case, your body. But this is in your body, your soul, your mental health, all these things, your society, your community, your family, everyone you come in contact with when you woke proof, it makes everything better. So it might seem a little bit daunting at first, but I assure everybody who's curious about woke proofing their life that it will pay off times a million.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it's basically the continuation or sort of broadening of political correctness. So this sort of means that it sort of come from the colleges.
The colleges certainly have a big part to play in wokeness. They seem to be institutions, factories for all sorts of radical, crazy left-wing ideas. My father he's a retired philosophy professor from Penn State, and his theory is the reason that so many colleges and universities come up with such radical, crazy left-wing ideas is because they're expected to earn tenure and get published and make a name for themselves and go on speaking tours and all these things to bring notoriety to the institutions of higher learning that they need to say something unique and profound and different. So the truth is has already been spoken. It's well documented. We've had so many great thinkers over the centuries, and so to come up with something new now, you basically have to say something that's untrue or crazy. And that's exactly what we see happening. So certainly our colleges and universities are where wokeness is. A lot of it is born and bred, but it's also, the mainstream media, politicians who are trying to appear diverse and equitable and inclusive and all of these things. It is a form of evil, so it's pretty much everywhere. But yeah, I would say woke institutions they're definitely public enemy number one.
Yeah, I think people find it most hard to de-wokeify education. So, like, what does a non-woke education look like?
We start with the classics. So I have a section in there about how to re-educate yourself as an adult. If you went to your basic public government funded school in America, you probably didn't get a very great education. And even if you learned the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, you're okay. But a lot of people went beyond that and were actually propagandized and brainwashed. So we kind of have to undo that now that we're adults. And I say jokingly that it's easy to do if you have kids, because you can homeschool them in the classical um, style and with classical curriculum. But if you don't, there's hope for you. There's many resources online, and I spoke to many of the people who have provided those resources for us, ways that you can go through and educate yourself in philosophy, religion, of course, studying scripture, the lives of the saints, all of these great thinkers who, as we said, have thought the great thoughts and put them down articulately for us and kind of solve the problems that we're seeing now. There's nothing really new about evil. It's just, as we see it in the form of wokeness, is taking on new language and new confusing terminology, but it's the same basic principles. So these things have been discussed and solved over the years, and we need to return to the classics and to these great thinkers and to learn from them.
Or do you come across a lot of people where it seems like they are afraid of sort of re-educating themselves, like they don't know where to start, in some sense, words of encouragement for that type of person?
Yeah, I would say I think it's a little bit daunting for some people who have never encountered the works that we're discussing. I think that people of a modern sensibility can look at these things and think maybe they're boring or they're intimidating. You see Plato and Aristotle, you hear these names and you think, oh goodness, those people were too smart for me, or only the nerds in college studied them. I'd rather just watch a movie or something. But again, I would encourage people to look at their lives and ask themselves, is this it? Am I just made to sit at home and eat Grubhub and scroll through TikTok on my phone? Do I feel satisfied by that? Is there something I'm missing? Is there some curiosity of my soul that's yearning and hungering for something more, to learn my purpose of life, to encounter truth? And I think everybody has that inside of him, but we just have to be open to it and not to take the easy, comfortable path all the time. I think our society and our modern conveniences, as many blessings as we have, really makes convenience and comfort very accessible for so many people that we have kind of lost that curiosity that has been innate in humans for many, many years, and that desire to learn and to know has been sort of I guess, numbed in us a little bit. So yeah, I ask people to think about how satisfied they are in their life, and to try something new, step outside of your comfort zone and explore. There's so many great works out there that are just waiting for you to be discovered and to nurture your mind and your soul.
Indeed. And you would say homeschooling is the optimal way of moving forward for parents?
I think so, but I was not homeschooled personally. I went to a small Catholic school and I loved it. And I want WokeProof Your Life to be for people from all sorts of backgrounds and abilities and situations. So not everybody is able to homeschool their children. Maybe they both parents have to work, or they just there's different reasons. Maybe they feel like they're not up to the task. Whatever it is, I do talk to several homeschooling parents and talk about how they did it, how rewarding it was, and how, I wouldn't say easy, but how I think it's a lot more approachable and not as challenging as many people might think. Many parents might think that it's this crazy thing that only radical traditional Catholics with 10,000 kids can do, but it's really not. And especially as this is a form where the internet and technology, as much as I run it down, it can be obviously very helpful and useful, because there's tons of resources out there and lots of different programs that parents can get to kind of streamline the homeschooling process and make it very approachable for people. But I also talked to a couple who started their own private school because they had started in a homeschool and they had a homeschooling co-op, which they enjoyed, and they found that their children were doing well with, but they wanted to offer more families more of a structured school environment and some of the advantages that a more traditional school has. So they took it upon themselves to start their own school, kind of with a homeschooling mindset. And it is a classical school, so they were able to adopt that curriculum. I also talked to a man who has started several classical charter schools across the country, and that's another option for people. Charter schools are tuition free. So if you live somewhere that doesn't have very good education choice laws, that's certainly a more affordable option for people. And I even talked to a woman who sends her child to a public school in Seattle, of all places, and she's very conservative and traditional minded. And she assures us that if you if that's your only option, or if that's what you choose to do, that there is a way to woke-proof your child even under such daunting circumstances. So there is a way to homeschool your child no matter what is going on, or sorry, to woke-proof your child no matter what is going on. I think homeschooling is probably the most foolproof, but you're not limited. Don't give up if you can't homeschool your kid, basically.
So one of the concerns also with like Catholic schools is how do you know that it's a woke proof school? Because a lot of Catholic schools I think have been affected by woke progressive values.
Certainly, yes. I would ask to look at the curriculum, to look at lesson plans. I would talk to teachers and ask them very specific questions about the woke agenda. Are you going to teach my child that a man is a man and a woman is a woman? A man cannot give birth. Ask about the policies. Gender is a big one in schools right now. About can boys play on the girls' team? What are your bathroom and locker room policies? It should become pretty obvious when you go and visit the school and talk to the teachers and the administration, and ask to see those documents, see what the homework is. Maybe you can sit in on a few classes before you decide to send your child to a private school or a Catholic school. So definitely ask all the questions, be as annoying as possible, because this is your child's brain, his mind, his soul, that you're putting in somebody else's hands who is not you. So you can't be too annoying whenever it comes to something like that.
Indeed. Now, this whole woke agenda has gotten into all kinds of different places, and that's kind of the scariest part. Is woke proofing your life sort of involves doing a lot of things that you may not even think of. And one of the things I was in the book I was most intrigued by is woke proofing, or getting a woke proof doctor. So
Mhm.
could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I spoke to a Catholic doctor in the Midwest who stresses the importance of that. And again, especially whenever it comes to your children, he has a list of questions in the book that are very helpful to parents to ask a family care provider before you let your child see him or her. And one of the big ones is, does the doctor leave the room? Because that's something that woke progressive doctors like to do. Or sorry, does the parent leave the room to get the child, whenever the parent's out of the room, to they'll start asking him questions like, are you sure that you feel comfortable in your gender, or maybe you're gay, and kind of encourage them in that way, and offer them hormone therapies or things like that. If you're a parent, you don't want to be out of the room whenever a doctor is asking your child questions. And so if that's the case, that's a hard stop. But even other things, contraceptives, end of life issues. Is your doctor pro euthanasia, for instance? These are maybe not obvious woke concepts, but they certainly are all related and all tied into the evil agenda, which is to control people and to control their lives, even up to the point of death. And it is a culture of death. So certainly your healthcare and lack thereof in some cases is very important, and it's something that's not talked a lot about. And this doctor reveals how much woke messaging and rhetoric is pushed in med school, and what he gives examples of what he saw. Something about like He had to take or go to a lecture about racial disparities in healthcare, something like that. He expected it to be, different races react to medications differently. They're more prone to certain diseases. He thought it was going to be something actually about treating the human body, but it wasn't at all. It was about what if somebody feels that you're being racist toward him or her during an exam. And he did say something very encouraging, which was most people, like 99% or something, don't care about woke stuff. Whenever they go to the doctor, they want to know, like, do I have cancer? Why is my knee aching? Why are you asking me my pronouns? What are you talking about? Like, they think this stuff is crazy because most people are sane and they just want to be treated for whatever is bothering them. So that is encouraging, but certainly our doctors are being indoctrinated in med school, which again goes back to your point about institutions of higher learning being super woke and super progressive, and unfortunately the medical industry is no different.
Yeah, it seems like the medical industry is also, and science in general, has moved so far into the commercial arena. So it's not necessarily about taking care of the body anymore. It's almost alchemy levels of like trying to turn things into things that they're not, like
Mhm.
trying to turn a man into a woman. It's basically the equivalent of alchemy back in medieval times.
Yeah, and that goes back to my point about the woke puppet masters and just radical progressivism in general being so anti-God and anti-religion, and being so evil, is that they want to be like gods, which was, of course, the first temptation to Adam and Eve in the garden was, well, I can make you like gods. And that's exactly what they're doing, trying to do. They have accepted the Satan's offer here on earth, and they're trying to attain their earthly reward by being like gods. They are telling people, you can be a man even if you were born a woman. You can just take these pills and you'll be different. Or, of course, you can, they're just taking reality and turning it on its head, and they're making the rules, and they're the ones that are being in control rather than relying on God and his mercy and his bounty to provide for us. They're the ones who want to control this earth and all of us. So,
Yeah, but not having, or being anti-God basically permits you to do whatever you see fit,
mhm.
and that's a big characterization of wokeness. Now, community is a very difficult thing to have in this modern day. Most people, I think a lot of people find their way, trying to find community on the internet, on Twitter, which is now X, or you know Instagram. There's a lot of different places you can communicate, just on the phone, uh, because of new technology and because of the way our economy works. People and traveling, people tend to move out of the places that they grew up and find jobs elsewhere. So how do we find and create a community in this woke world?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of doing things in real life. I have a lot of statistics in the book about the downsides of social media. Of course, if you curate it properly, it can be a wonderful tool by which to connect with like-minded people, to learn from one another. If you use it sensibly, of course, obviously, and moderately. But if we rely too much on social media, statistics, studies show that it leads to loneliness and isolation, and it again breeds this woke mindset where you can kind of be whoever you want and say whatever you want with no consequences. You can cancel things you don't like. You can censor people, and it's just a very unnatural, I think, largely unhealthy way to live. But again, if you're going to connect with people that way, maybe do that initially just to find the people, but then follow it up with a phone call where you're actually using your voice rather than just texting all the time or just posting things in this kind of silent, weird, robotic way that is not, I don't think, how humans were designed to operate and to socialize. And then I think all those studies that I alluded to prove, or it's God's way of showing us and proving to us that that's not the best way, because we have higher rates of depression and anxiety and all of these awful things. It just wreaks havoc on our mental health when we don't hang out with each other. And The opposite of that is showing as our studies that show how doing things in person boosts our mood, our mental health. Things like having dinner around the table with friends and family improves your mental health. Children who eat more dinners with your family more often are less likely to be addicted to drugs, to have teen pregnancy, things like that. It's just kind of the obvious old-fashioned way that we used to do things is proven time and time again in our personal interactions, but also by science, if you need that to be better for us and healthier for our mind, bodies, and spirits. And so, yeah, if you initially you want to find a group through social media or through the internet, that's very useful. But then go meet up with them. Go to the local sportsman's club and make some new friends. I have a little paragraph in the book about how I did that, and my social network really blossomed in real life. And I see people I know all the time, and it's just been beautiful. Again, your church community is a great place to start as well. Volunteer, go to the Knights of Columbus pancake breakfast when you don't really feel like it. Support these types of traditions. Whenever you feel like sitting at home and ordering Uber Eats or something, don't do that. Go to the local diner and interact with people. Sit next to someone, strike up a conversation, make small talk. Instead of whipping out your phone every 10 seconds when you have to wait somewhere, maybe look at the person next to you and make a comment about the weather or the beautiful wallpaper or whatever they're reading. Just get back to thinking about your fellow human as a soul that's on its own journey to heaven, and that you are journeying along with that person. And rather than the woke mindset, which is to think of everybody you encounter, your neighbor, as an enemy who might be a bigot or might have offended you, or you deserve to have reparations from, or something like that. So just switching that mindset to a more in-person, real life, old-fashioned way of living.
So, what kind of clubs are available these days, like that you think would be best for people to try?
I like church groups because obviously that's a great way to meet people who have the same belief system as you, and your bond with those people are going to be stronger. And certainly, if it's a Catholic group, a good traditional Catholic group, then you will have the same ideals and you will help one another achieve them in theory. So if you surround yourself by good people who are doing good things, then you are more likely to do those good things yourself and to be a better person. Also, just pretty much anything that gets people away from their screens that cause so much anxiety and anger, and where so much wokeness is born and festers, I think is positive, so long as it isn't sinful, obviously. Even simple things like sporting clubs, or, go play tennis with a group and make new friends that way. Or I talked to a man in the book who runs a website that unites people who are old home enthusiasts, and they get together and they talk about restoring their old houses, and they talk about, what is the most period correct paint color for my dining room, or should I paint this trim, or where do I find a light fixture that will go in my living room because my house is Victorian, or things like that. So I don't, a lot of those people probably have varying political viewpoints and religious beliefs, but whenever they're together, they're talking about those things that interest them and are outside of the political scheme. And you realize that you have more in common with your fellow humans than you really have differences, which is what the woke, they thrive on division and isolation and alienation. So the less we can give into their temptation to do that and to sit at home and be on your screen and be consumed by social media and the mainstream media, the better. So yeah, I mean, if you have an interest, there's undoubtedly a group that you can join and be a part of and make new friends and commune with people and strike up friendships and nurture one another and help one another get to heaven. And most of that requires you to go out into the real world. Gardening clubs, I think if everyone had a garden, then most of our problems would go away.
Mm-hmm. You talk about like people starting the sort of the institutions that have existed, starting their own institutions, where institutions have been sort of taken over by the woke. So it seems to me that if people have the capacity, that they should be more active in, creating what they can. If
Mhm.
their abilities are sort of, if they line up with the ability to create a school, then they should create a school, that type of thing. So, like, can you elaborate a little bit about sort of people using their abilities in that way?
Right, yeah. So there's the scripture quote, to whom much is given, much is expected. So if you have that capacity, you have a gift to offer, the Holy Spirit has put something into your soul and into your heart, a desire, and you see a need in the world, it is your duty to step up and take care of it and to do it. The man that I spoke to, very inspiring father, I think they have like 6 kids now, who started his own school. He went without pay for like 2 or 3 years, and his wife was a sole breadwinner, and they had to make sacrifices, and it was hard. And he says it's a lot of hard work, but all the most beautiful, worthwhile things are. And we've kind of been lulled into this complacency of just ordering things online, or just getting things automatically, or just mindlessly sending your child, at 8 in the morning to the local public school, getting your kid back at 3 p.m. and assuming that they learn something of value. But we can't do that anymore. Not that we ever really should have, but it's getting worse and worse. So now is the time, if you have been tempted to kind of step outside of the box and to exert yourself a little bit more, as the Mr. Pullman is his name that I quote in the book. He says, sometimes it does have to be you, and it can be scary and it can be a challenge. But again, if you feel that pull in your soul and in your spirit, and God is calling you to something higher and noble, then he will certainly give you the strength and the grace to be able to accomplish that. So do not be afraid, because you just pray and do your best, and God will do the rest.
Yeah. Were people becoming complacent? I feel like this whole thing has really woken people up to the fact that sort of there had been this lacking, even, or this danger in schools and other institutions, almost even before what we would call woke even came into existence. Have you seen that, or has that, like, thought popped into your head?
Oh, certainly. People kind of, I've gotten the impression, think that wokeness just came out of nowhere all of a sudden, but it has been percolating in various ways, simmering throughout our society for decades now. As I said earlier, it's just kind of updated language and new terminology. And I do think it's more extreme. Kind of the gloves came off after COVID. But it's been, evil has always been around. It always will be around in our fallen world. And the goal is always the same, is to control everybody and get your reward here in the here and now, and destroy society. So you look at things like affirmative action has been around, until the recent Supreme Court ruling, for a really long time. And that's not much different from diversity, equity, and inclusion. So these sort of ideas have been around for forever. So I think that wokeness does its kind of sudden rise, or the momentum that it is gaining, is in large part due to complacency. I think that, since so much of wokeness is about control, that the people who the woke are trying to control have sort of sat back and let affirmative action, or let the gay rights movement, gay marriage, things like that kind of slip in and come into being. And we're like, oh, okay, well, like, we fight it a little bit, or we kind of push back. But the people that the woke are trying to control, I think that we tend to be the actual open-minded, liberal in the traditional sense people, because we want people to have freedom to live their lives and provide for their families, and we don't really want to be bothered with all this socio-political nonsense. So we haven't bothered ourselves with it, but now we have to, because we have let it take hold. And it's been snowballing, and now we see where we are now, where we're debating whether a man can chest feed or not. So it certainly didn't come out of nowhere. I think that wokeness led to a big rise, which we can talk about if you'd like. But Yeah, it went from being kind of that laissez-faire, like live and let live attitude from a lot of more traditional minded people. So long as you didn't bother them with it, they didn't really care what you did. But now we are not only being bothered with it, and our children are being bothered with it, but we're being forced to participate and to fund all of these evil agendas. So now, and as a lot of people have realized, and we see from things like the Bud Light protests and Target and all those sorts of things, people are standing up and saying, no, enough is enough. Now you're forcing me, now you're making me take part in this evil. So no, we're done.
Do you think the laissez-faire mentality was part of the problem?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's kind of a natural American freedom loving, kind of libertarian attitude to have. But if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And that's exactly what we've seen happen. So we certainly have to stand up for our rights and speak out, even though it can get tiring. It can get exhausting. You kind of just want to go back to your home and like shut it all out and be like, just leave me alone. Just whatever. Just, I don't want to take part. But we see what happens whenever we don't stand up. And now is the time to WokeProof.
Well, speaking of the home, so I think a lot of people would probably think of sort of woke proofing your interactions with the outside world. So how important is the home in woke proofing?
Yes, I make the analogy in the book of woke proofing being like waterproofing yourself. So if it's storming outside, as it is right now, and you're going to go out there, you're going to want to put on a nice Gore-Tex jacket, some welly boots, a nice umbrella, maybe a waterproof, rainproof hat. And it's the same thing with woke proofing your life. So you're going out into the storm of the world, the storm of society and culture. And it doesn't mean that you're not taking part. You still have to go out in the world and provide for your family, of course, and interact with your neighbors. But you want to put on an armor of woke proofness so that whenever you go out into the storm, you're not affected by it. You don't get wet when you're waterproof. You're not going to get the woke barbs and the weapons that they throw at you are not going to make a dent whenever you woke proof yourself. And that starts in the home. We talked about education, reading virtuous materials, guarding your senses from things that are not positive, things that lead to your detriment. So being really aware of what you're allowing go on in your home, what your eyes and ears and mind and soul are absorbing. If you just have a TV on in the background, or you have an hour while dinner cooks. Are you sitting down on your phone and scrolling through and absorbing all this woke rhetoric that's on your phone everywhere you look? Or are you reading a book that is nurturing your soul and making you think of higher things and making you a better person? Is your home surrounded by artwork that inspires you to love God more, or to appreciate nature, creation, things like that? I encourage people to make their homes a woke-proof refuge. So every time you come into your home, you can be refreshed, and your family and friends can be also. Make it a place where whenever you enter, truth and beauty and goodness are growing and fortified. So I also encourage people to do things like host dinner parties for those that they love, and to share their goodness with others. Just have your friends over and chat. Use your living room and your dining room for what it was designed. Nowadays we have rooms where you go and you just binge, but back in the day we had windows. You could sit and appreciate the beautiful flowers and trees and birds outside your window. And we tend to not do those things anymore because we have become complacent and our senses are kind of being dulled, I think. So we need to bring back those traditions that made us better people and made our society just richer and fuller and more beautiful for one another.
Yeah, we more likely have a TV room than
Exactly.
a living room.
Yeah, and so many rooms or houses nowadays don't even have like a formal dining room. Those are passe. So our front porches, I know in the book, there's a I think it was a Wall Street Journal article a few years ago about the death of the front porch, and someone else I talked to pointed out that we went from being a front porch society to a back deck society. So rather than hang out on our front porch and talk to our neighbors as they walk by on the sidewalk, now we're just all secluded in our backyards and we're just all hiding from one another, and we're not having that sense of community anymore.
I'm surprised people go into their backyard, actually.
That's true.
That's probably a dangerous thing too. Not even just, if you're home, you could be nice out. You may not even go outside at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, there's another study I put in the book. I think Americans spend like 90% of their time inside, which I think is another real problem for our mental health that the woke rely on. I think screen addiction is a big reason why wokeness has taken on such perceived, at least, veracity, because it's such an easy way to disseminate woke rhetoric and to brainwash people and manipulate them and their moods. Is, if we're all using our phone way too much, and social media and mainstream media is largely owned by woke progressives, it's so easy. We just have this little resource right there in your hand and in your pocket all the time that wokeness can just enter our home and our minds. So yeah, get outside.
do you suggest people getting dumb phones?
I would love to get a dumb phone. Unfortunately, I work remotely, so I need my phone whenever I do go on a walk in nature, if for work, because like a lot of people, I have Slack, I have my emails, I have things like that. So yes, in a heartbeat, I think, if something happens that I could maybe have a career that was less reliant on the internet and things, I think that would be great. I did talk to a guy who said that he switched to a dumb phone, a flip phone, like several months ago. And he said it's like the greatest thing he's done for himself recently. He has this weight of anxiety that he has felt lifted from him. He's enjoying life more. He's more aware of his surroundings. He's made more friends. He's just a less stressed out person. And yeah, I'm all about the flip phone and the dumb phone. And, of course, not a lot of people are going to do that. And it's difficult, but I also have, ways that people can reduce their technology use, practical ways to make your technology into a recourse instead of a resource. It's very easy you have a few down moments, to whip out your phone and just start going through it. It's a habit a lot of people have, myself included. But be really guarded on that. If you do want to peruse Instagram or Facebook or something like that, set a timer. Whenever it goes off, you're done. If you're unable to reduce your social media use, I just deleted Instagram from my phone one day and I haven't looked back. I haven't missed it. Even if somebody sends me like a screenshot of something from Instagram, it kind of gives me anxiety just to even see the platform because it's so triggering, to steal a kind of woke word. And I wasn't even following anything, that bad. It was mostly like dogs or whatever, but it's still just like, I don't know, something about wasting time on your screen makes you feel kind of, at least made me feel kind of like dirty inside and like yucky after I would do it. And I would regret it. I'd feel guilty. So yeah, I encourage people to give up social media if they can.
Yeah, that was me with Facebook and Instagram. I got rid of those. I can't really get rid of Twitter or now X for podcasting reasons. So like our jobs or what we're doing, it's a little harder to cut yourself off in those ways. But,
yeah, and another, I would also advise people, of course, technology isn't all bad, but just to be really conscious of curating what you're following. So if you're following some, people on Instagram or Twitter, X, that are causing you rage, it's okay to cut them off. To remember that, just fighting for the sake of fighting, if it's fruitless, is a waste of your time and can become sinful. If you're kind of getting a high out of like arguing with internet trolls and bots and you're not going to change your mind, that's a waste of time, and it's manipulating your mood, and it's not healthy. It's not good. It's not fruitful. So remember that there is a time and a place to shake the dust. And sometimes that means on the internet too.
yeah, people are all about sort of, seeing results. So how can woke proofing your life make an impact?
Well, I glad that the Bud Light controversy happened right whenever my book was coming out, because it's a perfect example of how not only are you not alone, which again, the woke masterminds kind of rely on us to feel as if you're the only one. You're a crazy person if you don't go along with what we're saying with the woke talking points, and you're a bigot. Like, no one will like you. You won't have any friends. You'll be such a weird loner and will ostracize you. But that's what they want us to believe, and it is very effective. People are afraid of being called a homophobe or racist or whatever it is, but that's far from the truth. And we saw that in a big way with the Dylan Mulvaney backlash with Bud Light. We saw that with Target and their Pride line of clothing that they were pushing for children. We saw that with Dodger Stadium. They had a satanic something gay. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was
Yeah.
evil, and people rebelled in a big way, and they continue to. I don't think Bud Light will ever recover, because they're like, you know what, you took this too far. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we see songs like Try That in a Small Town, and the success of Oliver Anthony talking basically about, woke policies shooting to number one, because people are most people in most people in America are still traditional minded and sane, and they're still, still relatively Christian, at least in kind of a vague traditional sense. So as far as results go, I do have a section also in the book about boycotting, ways you can boycott. I have a list of woke companies, and it's pretty long, it's intimidating, and a lot of them are umbrella companies. So, they might, you're like, oh, I can boycott Nabisco, no problem. But then you realize there's like 50 things that you purchase that's owned by the same company. So it can get kind of like, you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to go be Amish now, because there's nothing I can buy or use in America. But that's not true. I also have ways that you can buy from companies that are either like-minded, non-woke, or just neutral, that don't take part in the culture war at all, which is refreshing. And then there's also ways that you can micro boycott. If you really rely on Amazon to get your diapers for your baby, and you just don't have time to run to the store or something, you live somewhere isolated, and you need that service, then that's okay. But maybe, if you're relying on that, then maybe cut out something else in your life, or look at something that you spend considerable funds on from a woke company. And if you can't find an alternative, maybe you can make something yourself. Or I'm really big on self-sufficiency, and again, how that can enrich your life and make your senses come alive and make you more alive and more kind of more fully human, and how beautiful that is. You interact with nature. Again, I go back to the garden thing, but maybe you need a new dining room table, and rather than buy one from Walmart or IKEA or somewhere, you find one at an antique store, or you can learn to make one yourself, or you repurpose one that you bought from the church rummage sale, something like that. There's always, I think, an option. To defeat wokeness, we need to have an equal and opposite reaction for every one of their crazy woke initiatives. So, yeah, it can be a little bit challenging, I guess, but if you get creative and you pray about it and you really want to do it, you can do it. And it's actually, I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of like a hunting expedition.
Well, yeah, it adds a sort of this awareness of these different things
Mhm.
allows us to change our mentality, and
Absolutely. It
we
also
can.
helps us simplify your life, I find. Uh, you can just do without things sometimes, and something you think that you need or you really want, that's a big part of Lent is purifying ourselves and making that sacrifice, and then you find at the end of it you never really need it and you don't really miss it. And again, with the community volunteering thing, the more you're out of your house and you're participating and you're giving back and you're giving your time and your talent to other people, the less stuff you're going to need. You're not going to just fill your emptiness with buying things that you probably don't need. We can live pretty simply without suffering at all if we try. And again, ask God for the grace to purify your heart and to give you a desire to live as He wants you to, which I would say certainly is not funding these woke corporations.
Yeah. Should people be moving, or should they be staying where they are? how do you deal with that?
I encourage people to move if they can, because again, the more you surround yourself with like-minded, virtuous people, the more not only community can you build, but the more virtuous you will each make each other. So it's good to surround yourself by positive influences. Um, that said, of course, not everybody can just up and move. They have family obligations, work, things like that. Maybe they've just lived where they live their whole life and their family's there and they like it, but it's become super woke around them. You can still obviously have a positive influence no matter where you are. I do find it helpful to move somewhere. I'm a big advocate of smaller towns. I think, and it's obviously shown that cities are tend to be more progressive and to advocate for these woke causes. And then of course, if you're living there and you're paying your taxes, you're giving your money again to woke causes that you don't believe in. So to be conscious of what a tax base can do and how evilly effective it can be. So, maybe consider moving to a different state if you can. I have a list of the most conservative states in America, most conservative cities. Maybe just a more conservative part of your state, to a less liberal county. I live in Pennsylvania, and Center County, actually, where I live, is kind of dominated by State College, Penn State. But I live in a little town, so we're pretty far removed, not physically, but mentally, and as far as our politics goes, from the liberal city that's nearby. So if you can live somewhere like that doesn't have these woke policies, I would encourage people to do that, and certainly to pray about it. Moving is a big deal, but again, if God has put it in your heart, I would ask Him to pray and to guide you. And I have spoken to people in the book who have done that, who have moved, and how they made their decision on where to move, what they did to make it happen, things to consider. You can, if you're able to, especially in this world where so much work is able to be remote, you can go live somewhere for a couple months perhaps and rent and kind of give it a trial time. Go read the local newspapers, go to some, local municipal government meetings if you can, see what they're talking about, see what they're spending their money on, things like that. Do your research, certainly. And bring your friends and your family with you, so you have a whole new not woke community, and leave the San Franciscos and the Chicagos of the world to kind of deteriorate, as sad as that is. But sometimes that's necessary for your salvation of your own soul and that of those you love.
Indeed. Well, thank you. That's great. And so the book is WokeProof Your Life, a handbook on escaping modern political madness and shielding yourself and your family by living a more self-sufficient, fulfilling life, by Teresa Mull. Teresa, thank you for coming on the show and talking about this book. It is at Crisis. It was published by Crisis Publications. I will have links in the description for people to find the book, and make sure you go out and buy it. So Teresa, anything to say before we go? Any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, I would just again encourage people, whenever they look out into what seems like this crazy, chaotic, woke world, that you are far from alone and you are in fact in excellent company. People like Connor and me are here to support you and to learn from one another and pray for one another, and to make your woke proofing journey not only not difficult but actually really enjoyable. And don't feel like you're alone, because that's just a lie that the devil is telling you. And woke proofing your life is easier than it looks.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you all for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And God bless. Bye.